Hello, YouTube. This is Mahadeva. All right, so I'm going to continue. I'm going to finish today because if I continue at this rate with the Gospel of Thomas, I'll never be finished with it. So we're going to continue with the Gospel of Thomas, and what you're going to see, because I peeked ahead this time, what you're going to see is that I'm going to start finding things that I don't like about it. I'm going to start seeing some of the Gnostic victim mentality in it, and you'll see within it some of the political things that are trying to come through, which is, again, it was a dangerous gospel for that reason, because it was something that I think was originally designed for Messianic Jews. So Messianic Gnostic Jews before, Christianity as we know it emerged, was actually a very militant, rebellious religion. And so they, there, as I understand it, there was a spectrum, and there were Messianic Jewish Christians. Just because they were Christians, it doesn't mean that they worshipped the Jesus that you know of. They were worshiping a Messiah. They were worshiping a non-physical warrior who was going to come down and lead the Jewish armies and get rid of all of the evil, blaspheming Romans. And then there was another aspect that was ascetic, and that's why he's called Jesus of Nazareth. Because Nazareth was a place where the Nazarites lived, and the Nazarites were ascetic, Gnostic, Messianic Jews. And so this is one of the reasons this was punched up in later Christianity, because the Romans were trying to say, no, you see, this rebellious, ascetic, Messianic leader, Jesus of Nazareth, see, he says, don't strike anybody and pay your taxes. They wanted to have this pacifist, tax-paying, Messianic, they were fine. You can rebel against the Pharisees if you want. You can rebel against the Jewish elites, that's fine. But you can't rebel against Rome. And so they appealed to the rebellious mindset and made Jesus into a Nazarite. That's why he was born in Nazareth in the scenario. Even though at the time that Jesus was supposed to have been born, Nazareth had not yet been founded. So this is one of the reasons why I say that the Jesus of Nazareth that you read in the Gospels could not have existed. Because the town that he grew up in, Nazareth, didn't exist at that time. Nazareth wasn't founded until at least, I think, something like 100 years after Jesus' supposed crucifixion. So it's a fiction. These guys who were reading this gospel, they didn't necessarily see this Jesus in this Gospel of Thomas as being a literal historical figure. And Gnostics didn't see Jesus as a physical being. They saw him as living as what we, in the parlance of today, that he lived in the 5D. He wasn't part of this evil world. He was part of the 5D. So more of that's going to come out as I continue to read it. I'll read some more of the stuff that I like. There's passages I'm not even going to deal with because I either don't understand it or I think it's nonsense. But if I think something's valuable to talk about, either positive or negative, I'll bring it up. So before we go any further, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell button, smash the like button. These links are here for a reason. Check them out. And we'll talk later about the 90-day challenge. A lot of people are signing up. I'm really happy to see that. So a lot of people are signing up, and I'm getting more and more very positive feedback experiences with the practice. So go check that out. All right, so let's just go straight into the text. here, and I don't remember exactly where I left off. Let's see. I didn't get very far. I think I stopped at the lucky is the lion that the human will eat. And to be honest, I don't know what that's referring to. I had an interpretation which worked well for me, but I honestly don't know what the original writer meant by this. All right, so there's some other parables on here that you will find. Now you start to see some of the parables that come up in the Christian canonical Gospels, which I'm not going to spend time thinking about, except that, when you go to church, when you read your Bible, your pastor tells you how to interpret these parables. And the parables that are in here, in comparison to the parables that you find in the canonical Gospels, you'll see that things have been added in the later Gospels to completely potentially change the meaning. And so this gives more evidence that this Gospel was in fact the source, because it is the oldest extant written Christian gospel text. It's the Gospel of Thomas is the oldest one. And so that does lend evidence that this was actually the source for all of the other canonical Gospels. So let's see. I'm not gonna talk about it, but there's a parable of the fisherman. He says the person is like a wise fisherman who cast his net into the sea and drew it up from the sea full of little fish. Among them the wise fisherman discovered a fine large fish. He threw all the little fish back into the sea and easily chose the large fish. Anyone here with 2 good ears had better listen. So when you hear that parable in the other canonical Gospels, it's Jesus telling Peter, I think, that he's going to be a fisher of men. And it has nothing to do with what this is saying, which to me, if I just read it, it sounds like just don't be an idiot. Eat the big fish and throw the little ones back. Don't focus on nonsense. Focus on what's important. Don't be greedy. Don't be stupid. But there could be some deeper meaning that meant that I don't know. Verse 9, here you've seen this one too as well. Look, the sower went out, took a handful of seeds and scattered them. Some fell on the road. The birds came and gathered them. Others fell on rock, and they didn't take root in the soil and didn't produce heads of grain. Others fell on thorns, and they choked the seeds, and worms ate them. Others fell on good soil, and it produced a good crop. It yields 60 per measure, 120 per measure. So you've heard that before, the parable of the sower, and your pastor, and even in the canonical Gospels, I think Jesus explains it. In the other Gospels, because it's just like, what the hell does this mean? People imposed a religious definition. Remember, religion is to bind together. And so you hear the interpretation of this to mean that the seed is the word of God, or the gospel of the good news, the gospel of Jesus. And so going out and throwing seeds, Christians have to go out and tell everybody about Jesus, and that works really well if you happen to be running a religion, and your religion happens to be the religion of the state, and you want everybody to be a good member of the machine, a good cog in the machine, but that's not what this says. There's nothing in here about that. It doesn't even say what it means. He just throws it out there. So, looking backwards at this, we have to be vigilant to not project our Christian biases, our Christian programming about how to interpret this. Because remember, this is the first one. The other ones that came later and they editorialized it. This is the first one. So you can't take a modern view and put it on this, because it's not there. All right, and the other thing that's interesting is that in this gospel, which is the first, there is no mention of Jesus' crucifixion, being raised from the dead. It starts to get more and more religious, where, talk about the Father and children of the Father and all that stuff, which I'm not going to spend time. I'll mention them if I think it's interesting, just to note how different it is. But other than that, we're starting to get into, religiosity that I don't like. So here in this next one, you're starting to see that this is actually a gospel not written so much for spiritual reasons as for political reasons. And the original intended audience for Messianic Christianity was not that there was this literal man named Jesus who died on the cross for your sins and rose from the dead, because there's nothing in here about that. It's a call to action. It's a call to action that the Romans wouldn't necessarily understand. This is typical. This is what the Old Testament is as well. Because remember, the Old Testament, the false story about Moses and Joshua escaping from slavery in Egypt and then going to Canaanite and killing the Canaanites and stealing their land, that's a complete fabrication. And the reason why they used the idea of Egypt is because they were actually in Babylon and they were writing the text of how, what their original intent, I believe, was we need to write a spiritual based text that will keep us in power and will get people to rebel against Babylon. So they couldn't use Babylon, so they used Egypt, because Egypt had been lording over that whole area for hundreds of years. And so that would have been, the Babylonians would have seen the Egyptians as enemies. So if they read that and go, oh, they're talking about fighting against the Egyptians. Oh yeah, go ahead. You can keep writing that. But it was really about the Canaanite Jews rebelling against Babylon. But since Babylon fell, they came back with this, and they didn't need that for that reason. But it still was the whole idea of erasing their Canaanite history and going over, because they had a lot of shame about being, underlings of all these other nations. So the same is true here. This is a typical Jewish rebellious kind of theme, in you interweave into your spirituality a call to military action. And so you see that here. Jesus said, I have cast fire upon the world, and look, I'm guarding it until it blazes. Other stuff here that don't make sense. This heaven will pass away, the one above it will pass away. The dead are not, let's see, how do I feel about this one? The dead are not alive, and the living will not die. During the days when you ate what is dead, you made it come alive. When you are in the light, what will you do? On the day when you were one, you became two. But when you became two, what will you do? So there's this theme of being at odds with yourself, which I like. You're either following your soul, or you're in conflict with your soul, and that's your ego self, your false self, your programmed self, the self that your parents and your teachers and your church and your politicians want you to be a good citizen and be a good cog in the wheel. And that, if you're that, then you're split in two. And so I like that. But again, I believe that this was really used more for political aims than spiritual as we go on. All right, I'm not going to read that. That doesn't mean a whole lot to us. Let's see. Here comes one. Here's the one that I really like. In verse 14. Jesus said to them, if you fast, you will bring sin upon yourselves. If you pray, you will be condemned. And if you give to charity, you will harm your spirits. So I personally like that. Now, as you know, I teach and I give people rituals. I give them shamanic rituals. I teach people shamanic rituals. And as you know, I really believe in energetic techniques and rituals to empower yourself. But I'm really focused on you doing what's best for you. What you need to do and what I need to do may be two completely different things, especially, if you look at somebody's astrological chart, and as I do, I give Vedic astrological readings. And in those readings, I will give you very specific rituals based on your chart just for you. And so your ritual will be totally different than mine. Different deity, different mantra, different direction. I mean, we could even slice it up even more, which I don't do. Time of day, all that stuff. Different offering. But it's not that I don't believe in ritual or following some kind of discipline or practice. It's that doing it just for the sake of doing it, just because somebody told you, is actually you're doing violence to yourself. So earlier on, let's see where it is, around 14. Earlier on, they asked him, and we talked about this yesterday, what should we do? Do you want us to fast? How should we pray? Should we give to charity? What diet should we observe? I mean, that's all just physical stuff that has nothing to do with anything, and that is a very religious thing. You have to fast and you have to clean your body. That was a big thing for these messianic ascetics, is that they were all about cleanliness. In fact, some of them they wouldn't defecate for a whole day or something like that, which ironically isn't clean. It's actually very dirty. But they were so obsessed with cleanliness and bathing and kosher, clean food and all that. You get lost in all of the dogma and you forget what the whole point of it is. And so I'm in full agreement with what he says here when he says, if you fast, you'll bring sin upon yourselves. If you pray, you will be condemned. And if you give to charity, you will harm your spirits. That's because if you're doing it for anything outside of for yourself, you're doing harm to yourself. Because this is me talking now, the greatest spiritual reality is your soul. Everything else is secondary. Everything outside of you is secondary to your soul. So even though that I do mantras and I do rituals and I work with planets and deities and energies, I see all of those things as somebody used the term earlier, those are fractals of me. And so by worshiping them, I'm actually bringing myself back into full balance, into full power. Each one of us has different strengths and different weaknesses. So that's what that's about. It's like, figuring out your perfect diet, your perfect workout at the gym. It's about you. It's not about the external things. I think that's fairly clear. But I like that. And that would have been a very blasphemous thing to say. If you fast, you'll bring sin upon yourselves. If you pray, you will be condemned. If you give to charity, you will harm your spirits. In other words, if you, especially, giving to charity, not because you want to, but to look good or to, follow the rules. I mean, this is why I don't like people who I consider to be, kiss asses. I can't stand it. I can't stand it when I feel like somebody's kissing my rear end, or, when somebody's, fawning and it's not coming from a real place. I can't stand it. It's the worst form of violence to me. Because when for instance, like people who are codependent and run around giving to people and fixing other people, what they don't realize is that on an unconscious level, they're actually doing violence to people. I've shared this example, but this is a good one. When my fiance passed away, and a few of her friends had a memorial, and they invited me to come. And they asked me to say something, and I started talking. Of course, I started choking up and tearing up because she had just died, like a day or two earlier. And one of her friends said, "Oh, don't cry. It's okay. Look at how beautiful the ocean is, and look at this. She wouldn't want you to be sad." And I didn't say anything, but had I not been in such an emotional state, I would have said, "You know what? Don't fucking dump that shit down my throat. Don't take that away from me. Just because you're uncomfortable with sadness doesn't mean that I can't have my feelings." Because that's what she was saying. What she was saying wasn't, "Look, feel better, I care about you." She was saying, "Shut up, you're making me uncomfortable. Knock it off." And this is what people do. This is what codependent people do, who are running around trying to fix other people, constantly giving things to other people. They have a transactional relationship where their narcissistic self-worth comes from being perfect in other people's eyes, being loving and kind, and what other people, making sure that other people are happy. That's really about their narcissism. It's not coming from an honest desire just to give and be helpful. So I like that. If you give to charity, you'll harm your spirits. Because if you're doing it because you care, it's not charity anymore. Charity is, okay, I'm going to give to that cause. Where if you do it because you care, then you're not thinking about what it cost you. All right, what else? All right, here's another good one. After all, what goes into your mouth will not defile you. Rather, it's what comes out of your mouth that will defile you. Because you know that the Jewish religion, you can't eat certain foods; they're unclean. So he might as well say it doesn't matter. You can go eat pork all you want. That's not gonna cause you. That's not gonna defile you. But what you say will defile you. And what I take from that is, a lot of people want to ask me, and this is very common. I've had this same experience myself, where people ask, how can I overcome this feeling? How can I overcome my fear? How can I overcome my doubt? How can I work through this? And what they're asking me to do is they're asking me, how can I get rid of my feelings? I don't want to feel this. And I always say, who said you were supposed to get rid of that feeling? I never said that. It's not, the feeling isn't the thing that harms you. It's the action that you take based on the feeling. That's what's going to harm you. And so he's talking about that. He says, it doesn't matter, what you eat. It doesn't matter what you feel. It doesn't matter what you think. I was, scrolling through YouTube, and some Hindu guru guy came up. He comes up on my YouTube feed every now and then. And he was having what looked like a church service. And he was talking, in Hindu terms about how to control your mind and how to get rid of negative thoughts. And I'm just like, and I listened to it, trying to find something in it, and it just sounded like Christianity. It just sounded just so superficial and guilting people out of their feelings, and that a spiritual person doesn't have any negative thoughts, and you have to control your thoughts and control your mind. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. That's violence. That's doing violence to yourself. And that's only shoving it down, going into denial, shoving your thoughts and your feelings down, and then you will act out on them, either consciously or passive aggressively, which is even worse. You don't even know you're doing it. But as you know, I teach people to have all of their thoughts and all of their feelings. And it's not having your thoughts and your feelings that's the problem. It's the actions that you take. So, it's not what goes into the mouth, but what comes out that will defile you. And that was a pretty bold statement, because this is a very rebellious statement against the established Jewish religion at that time. So again, this is a document of fomenting insurrection, not only against the Romans, but against the religious elite. And this was part of the Jewish Gnostic tradition, which later turned into Christianity, which later was then hijacked by the Romans and turned into something it wasn't, which was a historical text. It was never really meant to be that. It was always meant to be, just like, people are making religions out of Star Wars. They've made religions out of the Matrix movies. They know that the Matrix movies aren't historically real, but there's a truth to them that they create. We have to escape the Matrix. So that's what this was meant to be. It was meant to be something that was to stimulate people not to rebel against both the Romans and the Jewish elite. Okay, let's see what else. All right, there's some other stuff I don't want to read, which I think is just kind of nonsense. And just to prove the point here, this is a spiritual text designed to stimulate people to commit insurrection. Jesus said, "Perhaps people think that I have come to cast peace upon the world. They do not know that I have come to cast conflicts upon the earth, fire, sword, war. For there will be 5 in a house, there will be 3 against 2, and 2 against 3, father against son, and son against father, and they will stand alone." He's making it very clear. He says, your family, this is like what's happening in the States right now. Families are splitting up politically. Some people think that, the people who stormed the Capitol were all Antifa, and, Trump should still be president. He's the best president. And then there are other people that think Trump is, in the same family, will say that Trump is a thief and a liar and a traitor. And so this text is trying to foment that, knowing that, you can't, that we want to rebel against the Jewish elite and against the Romans. And you're going to have to be willing to walk away from your parents and your grandparents and your sister. You're going to have to be willing to be a part of that. Now, Christians will turn it into something else, but that's not. You have to go back to the context of when this was written. Anyway, what else? Let's see. Here's a good one. The disciples said to Jesus, "Tell us how our end will come." Jesus said, "Have you found the beginning then, that you're looking for the end? You see, the end will be where the beginning is. Congratulations to the one who stands at the beginning. That one will know the end and will not taste death." Again, bear in mind, I think this is saying will not taste death doesn't mean that you'll physically be immortal. I think it means that death is a state of being when you are in conflict with yourself, when you are not listening to your soul and you're living to be part of the conditioned self, as I call it. And he says, the end will be where the beginning is. And that is, why are you thinking about the future? The future hasn't come yet. You're only here in the now. This is why when I work with people who want my help with a career, I ask them all the right questions, and then they'll tell me and what it is their true desires, and I'll say, well, that's what you're supposed to do. And oftentimes it doesn't seem to make sense. How can you make a living like that? How can you live like that? And they'll very often say, well, I'm going to stay with my job until I save enough money. And I say, that's not how this works. You have to go after your command. The only command there is in the universe is the one that your soul gives you. And your command is to give yourself the joy that your soul wants, regardless of the cost. You trust that your soul will provide for you. And you don't wait around. Waiting around at the job you can't stand, waiting to get enough money so that you can quit your job and, whatever. That living in the future, that never happens. I mean, it very rarely works unless somebody's really clear about what they're doing. But, if you've already been doing it for 10 years and, the energy that's being sapped out of you, living the life you don't want to live, throwing your time away. Your time is the most valuable thing. When people buy services from me, you're not buying the teaching. You're buying my time. So that's why, there's things you can buy where you can get all kinds of video stuff, packages for a lot less money. But if you want to talk to me one-on-one, I'm going to charge you more money. It's because it's my time. The other aspect is if you have something that you've spent years and decades learning, and somebody asks to learn that, you're paying for their time retroactively. So, when you're working a job you can't stand, you're throwing your most valuable resource, which is your time. Now, if you enjoyed your work, not a big deal. But if you hate your work, then times it by 10. The amount of energy that it takes to sit in a desk for 8 hours doing whatever it is that you do. If you hate doing it, that means that your soul is constantly telling you to stop and to do what it wants, and you're smashing your soul down. And the amount of energy that it takes, life force energy, mental energy, emotional energy, to keep that down, that takes even more energy from you. So, it's not just 8 hours. It might as well be 80 hours of your life. That's why people who do jobs they can't stand, guess what? They get old really fast. They get sick, and they're doing things they don't like doing. Costs you energy. So what are you looking at the end for? The beginning is where the end is. This is it. All you have is the now. So live in the now. And if this was your last moment on earth, what would you do? I sure as hell wouldn't be doing this crappy, stupid job, right? You'd be doing something you want to do. So I think that's what that means there. And that's a theme that repeats itself. Congratulations to the one who has come into being before coming into being, etc. And then here's the mustard seed one. You've heard this. You've heard the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. If you have faith, that's how it goes. If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, which is tiny. A mustard seed is a tiny little seed. If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to that mountain, move, and it will move, right? And I remember hearing that in church and feeling guilty because they would say that and then they would say, do you really have faith in Jesus? Do you really have enough faith to move mountains? And of course, when you listen to that, the only answer you can come up with is no. So it's another way for religion to throw guilt on you and to control you and make you come to church more often and pay more tithe, etc., etc. But there's nothing here about that. The original verse about the mustard seed, nothing about faith. The disciples said to Jesus, tell us what heaven's kingdom is like. He said to them, it's like a mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, but when it falls on prepared soil, it produces a large plant and becomes a shelter for birds of the sky. Nothing about faith there. So again, the kingdom is about you. The Gnostic message is that the kingdom is within you and without you, outside of you. So your soul is like that. It's this tiny little beam of light that lives in your heart center. But when you live from that, it expands into infinity. All right, so there's some other stuff here that I either don't understand or don't like, so I won't read that. I won't waste your time with that. Here's some interesting stuff. They said to him, Jesus saw some babies nursing. He said to his disciples, these nursing babies are like those who enter the kingdom. Again, that's different from Jesus sitting there with the little kids and said, suffer the little children unto me, for these are the kingdom of heaven are such. It's not what we're saying here. He's talking about nursing babies. So I think that's a different intention there. He said to them, they said to him, then shall we enter the kingdom as babies? Jesus said to them, when you make the two into one, and when you make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower, and when you make male and female into a single one, so that the male will not be male, nor the female be female, when you make eyes in place of an eye, a hand in place of a hand, a foot in place of a foot, an image in place of an image, then you will enter the kingdom. So I like that because for me, when you make the two into one, you're at odds with yourself when you're in conflict. And it's, this is the dualistic nature. Because your brain, your mind and your psyche is designed. When it is healthy, here's how it's designed. It's designed that as you're an infant, first thing that happens is your mother, assuming your mother is healthy, has no self-image about you. She has no agenda of who you should be. She is not, if she's healthy, projecting onto you her own unresolved childhood issues, which every parent does to some degree. The more destructive, the more dysfunctional the family life, the more the parents are going to be projecting their own unresolved issues about themselves onto the kids. So ideally, the way that we are designed is that the mother has no agenda. This is what the iconography is when you see, Mary looking at Jesus, and people look and worship that image, because that is an accurate image of what the connection should be. It's interesting they don't believe in a goddess, but they worship, even if they're born-again Christians, they will talk, very highly about Mary. And that's what that picture is, of Mary looking at Jesus. Both, there's one, looking at the baby Jesus, and then there's that one very famous art piece where Mary is holding Jesus after he's been crucified. It's the same thing. She's looking at him, zero agenda. And the baby, if you're born in a healthy home, the baby looks in the mother's eyes and sees nothing but the love, and can see themselves in the reflection of the unconditional love. And that creates an identity. And then as the infant grows, the infant will then have to go through a difficult period where, as they get older, they'll find that mom is not God. Mom is not perfect. And they will go through a disappointment phase. And this is, the terrible twos. That's why the terrible twos are there, because the baby's going from infancy into toddlerhood, and they're learning how to individuate. So they have to practice. No, they're themselves. Mommy and daddy aren't perfect. When mom doesn't do what the baby wants, baby cries. Baby gets furious. Mom then holds the baby while the baby is crying, because the baby is furious at mom for not being perfect, not breastfeeding or whatever it is that mom isn't doing at that moment that the baby wants. And mom says, it's okay. It's okay to have your feelings. And so what happens is the infant learns to parent themselves. So this is what toddlerhood is about. Toddlerhood is, that's why toddlers learn how to walk. They're learning how to parent themselves. They're learning how to be disappointed, not get what they want, and not have their own narcissistic needs constantly dealt with. So then what ends up happening is they learn to then see mom as less than perfect, but then they learn to love mom, because mom is teaching them, it's okay to have your feelings. I still love you even though you hate me right now. And so they then grow up and go through issues, and then as an adult, they parent themselves. So a healthy person is when somebody hurts your feelings, or you don't get what you want, or things don't go the way you want them to. Instead of thinking, oh, the world has it in for me, we live in an evil matrix, and there are beings of light that want to do this and that. Instead of going through all of that nonsense, you go, it's okay, I didn't get what I want. I'm really sad and upset about that. And that person, I was really hoping they were going to be this, but you know what? Their farts stink and they're not perfect all the time. And that's okay. It doesn't mean I'm not loved, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to love them. And this is simply the result of mom looking at the infant without any agenda, so that the baby learns how to parent themselves. It really comes down to that. It's that simple. The more destructive the person, the less ability they have to parent themselves. Narcissists are a good example. Serial killers, as horrific as serial killers are, the thing that's wrong with them is that they can't parent themselves. They can't tolerate their uncomfortable feelings. I forget which one it is. One of the serial killers, Jeffrey Dahmer. He would meet somebody. He would meet somebody out, and his plan wasn't to murder that person. His plan was to take them home and to have sex with them and date them. And he would bring the person home, and whatever happened, and then the person would want to leave. They'd want to go home. And then something would snap inside of him, and then he would attack them and kill them because he didn't want them to leave. He couldn't tolerate his object of love being taken away from him. And so by taking their life, then they had no will of their own. And that's why he did all those gross things to their dead bodies, because they were still there and they could love him. And that comes from somebody who can't tolerate, somebody not giving them what they want. Like the infant not getting what they want right now. It's that simple. Simple, but it's really intense, and it's really evil, and it's really awful. So next time you look at somebody who's evil, the only thing that's going on with that person is that they can't parent themselves. They can't tolerate their own negative feelings. That's why those of you, when you ask me, how can I get over this feeling? I say, who told you you're supposed to get over that feeling? Love yourself in it. Because then you'll be able to parent yourself and heal and grow. See, now we take all of the hoopla out of religion. We take all the hoopla out of spirituality. And it's not about being superior or any of that other garbage. It's just about being human. Somebody who's a saint, somebody who's enlightened, is simply somebody who can tolerate their own feelings and tolerate you and your feelings. That's it. You can't get any more evolved than that. That's all it is. And I think that's why the soul comes here, because in the spirit realm, the soul lives in perfect bliss and unity and love. So it comes here to really learn what love is. And it starts with self-love. So when you split, when the one becomes two, and you have this conflict within yourself, instead of having a loving parent guiding you through life in your mind, you have an evil critic that lives in your head, and that's what shame is. You feel shame, you feel guilt, you feel anger, and you go through life, and who knows what happens. And for instance, you fall in love with somebody, and they don't happen to love you back. If you've got an inner critic, your inner critic is going to take you aside and tell you how worthless you are and how stupid you are and how ugly you are. And then you're going to end up hating that person, and you're going to want to slash their tires because they didn't love you. Whereas if you have an inner parent who loves you inside, and the person doesn't want you, you'll be very sad, and you'll cry, and you'll miss them, and I wish that person loved me, but you'll go, but that's okay. They don't have to love me. It's okay. They have the right to love whatever they want to love, and it's no reflection on me. I'm an individual, they're an individual. Individuation, this is the whole goal. That's why those of you who are doing the practice, you're doing it like me for the same reason as me. You're doing it for the power that it brings. I mean, the power and the physical healing and the bliss and all of the amazing changes that happen in your life. But what's happening? You're having to feel a lot of feelings. People are saying, I'm having a lot of feelings. How do I get over my feelings? No, you don't. You parent yourself through them. You treat yourself like you would a little 4-year-old. If a little 4-year-old came up and was crying and said, so-and-so was mean to me at school and I hate them, you would pick them up and you would hug them and you would say, it's okay to be hurt. That would be very painful. But, you don't have to hate them. That's what a loving parent does. You do that to yourself, you'll become enlightened. The things I'm teaching and the exercises that I'm giving you, when you do the certain breath, or you do the element breaths, or the mantra, or whatever it is that I'm telling you to do, that's stimulating all the feelings in you, is that we're using an energetic lever. We're using energy, and we're pulling levers in your meridians in your body to release the energy. The energy in your heart will then release blocked, unresolved emotions. And then you'll have to feel them. Because when you pull those levers, you're telling the body, I want access to all of the power within me and outside of me. And then the body goes, oh, I don't have to hold on to this. I don't have to protect you from this feeling anymore. Okay, and it lets it go. And then the more that you release those feelings, the less garbage you're carrying around with you, the more energy you have, the happier you are, the healthier you are. But you have to be willing. Like it said in the very beginning, the very first or the second verse of this, Jesus said, those who seek should not stop seeking until they find. When they find, they will be disturbed. When they are disturbed, they will marvel and reign over all. He's talking about individuating. It is no different. It sounds amazing, but it's not. Those who seek to know themselves, meaning you want to know all of your unconscious thoughts, feelings, and agendas, they should keep seeking until they find. When you find out that relationship that you thought was the perfect person and they hurt you and destroyed you, when you realize that you were selfish and narcissistic and you were projecting onto them your daddy issues and trying to fix your daddy issues with somebody, and you were just as destructive in that as they were to you, you will be disturbed at yourself. And then you will understand and you will marvel at yourself and others, and then you'll reign over all. You'll reign over yourself. You will know, you'll have a better ability to know what your unconscious agendas are at any given moment. And you'll be able to see other people's unconscious agendas. You'll be able to avoid getting hurt. You'll be able to avoid hurting others. And you'll be able to then attract people who are more conscious and aware. If we're just talking about relationships. It's talking about individuation, but you don't know that. If I first read it to you, it sounds like, oh my God, the sky's going to open up and giant 7-headed demons are going to come up, and then giant angels with wings are going to come, and you know, that's our projection. But it's not. It's just telling you, you know, that the highest spiritual goal is just to be human, and the highest state of humanity is to be individuated, to lovingly parent yourself. All right, let's see what else. Where was I? So that's what all this being one and, you know, not being two and all that stuff. It just means being unified within yourself and not having this constant battle within yourself. The judgment. All right, there's some other stuff here which sounds really political to me, so I won't read it. Here's one. His disciples said, "Show us the place where you are, for we must seek it." He said to them, quote, "Anyone here with 2 ears had better listen. There is light within a person of light, and it shines on the whole world. If it does not shine, it is dark." So, I don't know what the original words were, but I'm a stickler for words. And if I look at these exact words, there's some very important meanings here. So, it says, there is light within a person of light. So it's, you know, you are that. You are light. Your soul is light. So he's saying that there is light within you. And it shines on the whole world. So you don't have to do anything. You come into the world as a soul within a human body. If you're lucky enough to not have a bunch of karmic stuff that you brought with you, unresolved karmic issues, and if you're lucky enough either to have a loving parent who's able to parent you through that process, and or you're able to learn how to parent yourself, the end result of that is, without having to do anything, just by being and existing, your light will shine. Just by being a soul. This is the great thing. You don't have to work through sins. You don't have to work through karma. You don't have to do any of that stuff. All you have to do is just figure out what the conflict is within you. I'm living my dream right now. And I'm living my dream because I faced the conflicts inside of me, and I chose to go against all of the things inside of me and outside of me that said that I had to stay, in California, and I had to, but whatever it was that my soul said, no, I want to sell everything. I want to put everything in a suitcase, and I want to go to Australia and live on the beach, and we'll figure out what happens after that. And I did that, and I've been here, and my soul was really kind to me because it got me here before, just a few months before COVID hit. And I've been lucky enough to be completely, not only in my perfect fantasy, but I've never had to wear a mask, because we don't have it here in Queensland. They locked everything down. And so there's, you just don't, we hear about it on the news and we see the horrible things happening everywhere else, but we don't have to deal with it. That's because I listen to my soul. And so if you do that, your light will shine. You don't have to do anything to make it happen. Your light will shine all on its own. So there is light within a person of light, and it shines on the whole world. If it does not shine, it is dark. If it does not shine, it is dark. It doesn't say there is light within a person of light and it shines on the whole world, and then there are those that have no light and they have nothing to shine because they're evil. It doesn't say that. It assumes in this next sentence that your light is there. The question is whether or not your light is shining. And if you are in conflict with yourself, your light doesn't shine. So either you are shining your light or your light is dark. That's it. You hear that? Now let's read the whole thing. Now don't impose on it. It's really clear. It's very simple. He said to them, first his disciples, this is an interesting question. They say, show us the place where you are, for we must seek it. Which is interesting because he's standing right there in front of them. And they say, where are you? I like that. Where is your essence? Where is your mind? Where is your, you could be standing next to somebody and totally disconnected. There's no connection there. They want to connect to him. Where can we get to the place that you're at within yourself? Show us the place where you are, for we must seek it. We don't understand you. He says, anyone here with two good ears had better listen. Jesus Christ, how many times do I have to say this? There is light within a person of light, and it shines on the whole world. And if it does not shine, it's dark. You're either shining your light or you're not. He doesn't even say, this is what I'm doing. He just gets them back to themselves. He doesn't say, go be where I am. He says, be where you are. All right, and then there's some other stuff you've heard before. If you see the sliver in your friend's eye, but you don't see the timber in your own eye, when you take the timber out of your own eye, then you'll see well enough to remove the sliver from your friend's eye. That's not about judgment. You hear that in church and it tells you not to judge. That's not what it's saying. It's talking about living your light and knowing yourself. He's saying, how can you know yourself if you can't, if you don't take out the conflict within you? You can see the conflict in other people. So now deal with your conflict. When you are free of conflict and somebody comes to you and says like that, where are you? How can I be like you? You say, oh, well, you've got that sliver. You've got this conflict that you have. Deal with that conflict and you'll be happy. But if you're in conflict, then you're going to project that conflict onto other people. Notice how he says you have a sliver, you have a splinter, a tiny little splinter in your eye, but you see this huge log coming out of somebody else's eye. You are projecting onto them your problem. This is what racism is a perfect example. Anything that you hear racists say about other races, that's how you know exactly how they feel about themselves on an unconscious level. Until they can look at their own self-hatred, they'll never be able to see themselves in somebody else. Which is, the lack of racism is to see yourself in other people. So this is a good example of that. And it's not about don't judge. That again, that's like stuff your feelings down. You have all these judgmental feelings. Stop having those feelings. You can't. If you're full of judgment, you can't stop that. The only thing you can do is look at yourself. So one of the things that I do when I have judgment, because I have judgment, obviously, you've followed my channel, you've seen me in judgment. When I have judgment on other people and I can tell that what's coming out of me or what I'm feeling is destructive, I go, oh, that must be how I feel about myself. And then I go deep within and I look at the self-directed negativity and then I'm able to stop projecting on others. And then if somebody has a limitation, I'm able to accept them in their limitation. It's not a judgment anymore. So it's not about not judging because that's a sin. It's about not knowing yourself. If you know yourself, your light will shine. All right, and so now it starts to get, I think it starts to get really religious, and I don't like the idea of any religious figure being the focus of anything. Deities are different. People will say, well, why do you worship deities? Well, deities are not people. Deities are forces within the universe that are actually projections of myself. And so I want to have more of that which is part of me. For instance, if I worship Mars, if I worship a Mars deity, I want that warrior power within me because that's my Aruda. I want more of that. So I'm stimulating that within myself by focusing on the external projection of that. But when you've got a spiritual teacher who says, I came here and I did this and I am that, it completely invalidates whatever they're doing. So just like the Buddhist saying, if you see Buddha on the side of the road, kill him. Because if you're a Buddhist, you're worshiping Buddha as a deity, which is self-awareness. You're worshiping that. And if that is embodied in a human being and you walk past it and you can't see the humanity in that person and you see only this perfected thing, you're going to lose yourself. You're going to fall on your face and you're going to worship that person, and then you'll have lost the whole point of it. So kill that. You see Buddha on the side of the road, kill him. He's distracting you. You are it. You are the Buddha. Nothing outside of you is the Buddha, unless you use it like that in a ritualistic way to empower yourself with what you already are. So I don't like this when I hear this, some of this religious stuff that starts coming through here. Jesus said, I took my stand in the midst of the world, and in flesh I appeared to them. I found them all drunk, and I did not find any of them thirsty. My soul ached for the children of humanity, because they are blind in their hearts and do not see, for they came into the world empty, and they also seek to depart from the world empty. But meanwhile they are drunk. When they shake off their wine, then they will change their ways. That to me sounds like just the most disgusting nonsense. The condescension here. Now we're hearing, something close to the biblical Jesus who came and unilaterally decided to die for your sins. You poor, stupid idiots. And so you better feel guilty and accept the sacrifice, because otherwise we'll throw you in hell. It was a free gift and we've saved you, even though if you don't accept it, it won't work for you. Try and figure that one out. So I had this whole idea of him standing in the midst of the world, and I found them all drunk, and none of them were thirsty. My soul ached for the children of humanity, because they are blind in their heart. I mean, that's just, that kind of talk is pure projection. That is somebody, I'll tell you who this is. Whoever wrote this is now projecting their own misery. But because they're unconscious of it, they're going to project it from this place of, I'm above you all. But it's not, I'm not an evil God. I mean, I ache for you. This is how he feels about himself. So Jesus said, I took my stand in the midst of the world, and in flesh I appeared to them. I found them all drunk, and I did not find any of them thirsty. So he's saying, this is what happens when people say, I just want people to love me for who I am. Just love me for me. That's a very infantile way of going through life, because people don't do that. Only a healthy mom will love you as an infant for who you are. Everybody else is going to love you for what you do, to some degree or other. So he's saying, I took my stand in the midst of the world, and in flesh, meaning I'm not fleshly, I'm this spiritual being, and I found everybody drunk, and none of them were thirsty for me. Nobody wanted to know me. My soul ached for the children of humanity, which means he's projecting onto himself the children of humanity. It means that his soul is aching. He wants people to see him and to love him. And if people don't see him and love him, then they're blind to the truth. I mean, have you ever dated people like this? People talk like that? Don't you see that I love you and you're not letting me love you? Don't you see that I'm the best person ever for you? I mean, if you've talked like that, you've been with people who've talked like that, and you're like, oh my God, get out of yourself for half a second. That's why I don't want to be with you, because you're so wrapped up in yourself and you're so condescending. And you act like you're doing me a favor by just existing. Give me a break. There's nothing in that verse that says anything about the self-empowerment that I've been hearing in some of these other verses about. The light is within you. Forget about me. Forget about other people. Let your light shine. Don't be in conflict with yourself. Find the light within you. And here he is now. He's putting himself out here. Look at me, and that's what, Christians will say. Do you really love Jesus? His heart breaks for you and you don't love him. It's like, oh my God, go get a life already. Christ. All right. Let's see. Let's see if there's more here. All right. So I don't really care about that. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. All right. So now we're getting into some of the stuff you've seen in the other Gospels. I like this. Jesus said, "The Pharisees and the scholars have taken the keys of knowledge and have hidden them. They have not entered, nor have they allowed those who want to enter to do so. As for you, be as sly as snakes and simple as doves." The Pharisees and the Sadducees were the two sects of the Jewish religious elite. And the Pharisees would be the Republicans. The Sadducees would be like the Democrats. So the Pharisees were very literal. They took the Torah literal. And the Sadducees were more philosophical, and they didn't take things as literal. You don't hear about the Sadducees very much in these traditions, but you hear a lot about the Pharisees. And that's because, when you hear Jesus talking about the hypocrisy of the Pharisees, etc., etc. And forget about what side of the aisle you're on for just a second. Go and watch what's happening in Congress right now. What you're going to see is the Republicans, who are smarting from having lost the election, obviously. They're just obstructing everything. They're not, they're because now they're in the minority. All they're doing is they're obstructing anything that wants to happen in Congress. So they're not putting forth anything except for they're wanting to change some voting laws, which to me is voter suppression. You can have your feelings about that, but the other things they're doing is just tricks to try and obstruct government from doing its job. And I think Jesus here, who's obviously is not Jesus, whoever's writing this, it doesn't like elites at all. So they don't like the Romans, and they don't like the ruling elite, which would be the Pharisees. And because that's what ends up happening when you've got this tyrannical ruler on the one end, and then you've got these elites who want to hold on to their power, and the way to do that is through this tyrannical ruler. Then they end up not getting anything done for anybody. On the one hand, they say, "Oh, we're not like them," but at the same time, they're not working for their people. So they don't help anybody, and they don't let anybody even help themselves. So on a spiritual level, that's what the reason I'm bringing this out is that this brings it down to what this was all about, because there's nothing spiritual about what that was just said, other than religious elites don't want to help you find the truth. But that just buys into a whole conspiracy theory. But if what you're doing is you're trying to appeal to people and trying to get them to rebel, then you use this enlightened spiritual teacher who then is making political statements. That was a political statement. He was talking about, he might as well have said, the Republicans have taken the keys of knowledge, have taken away prosperity, and they've hidden them, and they won't let anybody trying to get a good wage from making a living. He might as well have said that, because that's exactly what it's talking about. But 2,000 years later, we project onto it something that's not there. That's what I see when I read that. Let's see what else. Jesus said, "Be passers-by." I kind of like that. All right, here's some more political stuff, which I won't get into. Here's one. I don't like this either. This is, I think, taking it out of find yourself, which I think was supposed to, what people supposedly like about the Gnostic texts is the idea of know yourself. And this takes you out of that. Jesus said, verse 44, "Whoever blasphemes against the Father will be forgiven, and whoever blasphemes against the Son will be forgiven. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven either on earth or in heaven." And I just don't buy that whole idea of never being forgiven, and the whole idea of needing to be forgiven. And the whole idea that you can't have your own feelings. Again, let's take it back to the healthy relationship with a child. When the mother who loves the infant unconditionally, when the infant hates the mother doesn't say, that's it, if you hate me, you're done. Go fix your own dinner. Go clothe yourself. Go wipe your own ass. I'm out of here. If you don't love me, I'm not going to love you. Mom doesn't do that. The mom says, I know. I still love you. It's okay to have these feelings. I'm still here. And then the child grows up. When they have an uncomfortable feeling, they love themselves through it, and then they can take constructive action. And here, Jesus is giving some guilt thing about, what does that mean to blaspheme against the Holy Spirit? What the hell does that even mean? Christians will tell you that means when you deny Jesus. But it doesn't say that. But the whole idea of blasphemy, the only blasphemy that can ever happen is blasphemy against your own soul. That's it. There is no other blasphemy. You can watch me, and as many people do, you can come up with whatever judgment you have on me, and that's not going to harm you. If you're judging me because you are projecting onto me the self-hatred you have about yourself, then that inner self-hatred will cause you harm, but you can stop. The moment you stop hating yourself, the universe unconditionally gives you all the energy and the love that you need. There's no need for even forgiveness. So I don't like this whole idea of forgiveness, and what does that mean to blaspheme against the Holy Spirit? That's a really good way to set people up, that if you look at what I did for you, that wasn't me, that was the Holy Spirit through me. You're blaspheming the Holy Spirit, which is just a passive-aggressive way of saying, don't ever contradict me or you'll go to hell. That's all that's saying, and I don't like that. So again, I'm trying to show you, that there's, a lot of people will come to me and they'll say, prove that. I'll say something and they'll want me to prove it. Say, prove it. Say, well, how would you like me to prove it? What would be proof enough for you? Well, if you can find some ancient document. Oh, so as long as some human writes it down in a document, as long as it's old, then you'll believe it. But if I say, because I just saw it or thought of it or channeled it right now, that's not good enough for you? What's the difference? You go back in time, there's some guy who went, and he wrote it down in the moment. What's the difference? I mean, I'm okay with you not believing what I say, but why are you going to just take somebody else's word for it because it happens to be an old scripture? Who gives a crap? It was still a human that wrote it. Maybe they channeled it, maybe they didn't. I don't know. Let's see. There's some stuff about John the Baptist, which I really honestly don't care about. Now, remember the previous verse I shared from earlier Christianity, where it says, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed and you say to this mountain, move, it will move. Remember? Well, that's actually two verses from here squished together and completely changed around. Because remember, first time that in here, when it talks about the mustard seed, it's not talking about that. Let's go back. See, we're on 48 now, so let's go back. Let's see if I can find that. So here we're going to find what the real mustard seed thing was about. Let's see, where was it? It's got to be up here somewhere. He said to them, the disciples said to Jesus, tell us what heaven's kingdom is like. He said to them, it's like a mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, but when it falls on prepared soil, it produces a large plant and becomes a shelter for the birds of the sky. Nothing about faith. Just talking about, remember, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Your soul is the kingdom of heaven. So your soul is like a mustard seed. When you live from your soul, it branches out and becomes the largest tree. The tiniest little seed becomes the largest tree. So your soul, even if you tap into the tiniest aspect of your soul, your life will expand and your experience will expand bigger than any of the other trees, according to this. So let's go now to 48. Now you're going to find the other half of what was pasted onto that to try and make it mean something completely different. So 48, Jesus said, if two make peace with each other in a single house, they will say to the mountain, move from here, and it will move. It's got nothing to do with faith. Now, I don't really care about two, on the one hand, he says, you're going to be at war with everybody in your household. And then he comes back and says, if two make peace with each other in a single house, so it's like, pick one. What do you want? You want people to make peace with each other, or you want them to fight with each other? But all he's saying here is if, two people agree that they can accomplish a lot. Nothing to do with faith or, any of that other stuff. So here you see, the later religionists who have taken this original gospel and they're mixing and matching for their own good, right? And, they're talking about faith. The reason why that whole thing about faith, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you need that because Christian religion is telling you things that don't make any rational sense. How can God be perfect and all loving and yet have destroyed all life on the planet, through the flood? And how can he be all loving and love you unconditionally when you're probably going to go to hell if you don't have the correct view of religion? None of that makes sense. To which somebody would say, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can tell. In other words, forget what you see, forget your experience, forget your common sense. Believe what we're telling you. Make it a purely intellectual thing that you shove into your brain and you intellectually accept, even though underneath it doesn't make any sense at all. So they took these two completely different things that had nothing to do with that, and they turned it into a way of gaslighting. So it's a verse of how to gaslight somebody. When somebody says what you're doing doesn't make sense or what you're doing feels destructive. Really? So you don't have faith in me? What do you mean I don't have faith in you? Well, I'm God's servant. You don't believe in God. That's the same kind of argument that people used during the Iraq War. When people were against the Iraq War, people would say, there are Americans dying in there. What, you don't support the troops? No, I didn't say I don't support the troops. In fact, I am supporting them. I don't want them to die for a stupid cause. No, you hate the troops. You either love the war and love the troops, or you hate the war and hate the troops. It's that same kind of gaslighting. You either have faith like a mustard seed and you believe in all this stuff that doesn't make any sense, or you don't, and you don't believe in God and you're going to go to hell. So pick one. Which one do you want? You can see that. Somebody's looking at this, creating a new gospel, and they're picking some of the popular things. Let's take that one and let's add it to this. Or let's take this one and then let's editorialize it so they'll know what we want them to believe. That's what I see when I look at this. All right, is there anything else here? There's some other stuff. We're going to see some hatred of the feminine coming up here pretty soon. Here's some other stuff you see in a lot of others. The one that I like, 55, Jesus said, whoever does not hate father and mother cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not hate brothers and sisters and carry the cross as I do will not be worthy of me. We can take the cross part out of it. But I like the whoever does not hate father and mother, because in order to individuate, you must go through a period where internally, not externally, but psychologically, you kill your parents. Now, what that means is that your parents stop being God and they become just another human, and you become your own parent. So when you become your own parent, which all parents should want you to be, then you're psychologically killing your parents. So if Jesus here represents the soul is saying, if you don't end up hating your father and your mother, meaning not seeing them as your source for everything, you can't be one with your own soul. Your brothers and your sisters, if you feel the need to make other people happy or to fit in, as opposed to living for your soul, then you're not worthy of your own soul, which means that you won't be living from your soul. So you must be willing to lose everybody's love. Doesn't mean you have to. I mean, hopefully your father and your mother will still be there and you will love them and they'll love you and your brothers and your sisters and your friends. But you must be willing to be your true self. To follow, more specifically, to follow your true path. And if people don't like it, they're not worthy to be your mother, your father, your brother, or your sister. I made that conclusion to myself because my family, was really, I felt really unsupportive and destructive I couldn't stand being around my parents, and they were, I felt really devalued by them. Very, very destructive. And so I made the decision when I was in my early 20s that they're not my family. I may be born from them, I may share their same blood and DNA, but they're not my family. My family are those who have earned it. And I had a friend of mine, and I would go over to his house and have Thanksgiving dinner with them and all that, because I considered them to be my family because they treated me the way I thought family should treat other family members. My family, I just did whatever the hell I had to do, and I decided that they weren't part of my life anymore. And that's an extreme example of, I think, what this says is, look, your father and your mother, you're going to have to individuate. They can't be God anymore. And you can't make other people's approval of you more important than your own happiness of your own soul. And it might be very lonely. But, you'll eventually end up having other people that will come to you and treat you like family, and you will have that light within you that spreads into infinity, and you won't need, it might be painful for you, but you won't need anybody else's acceptance. See, is there anything else here that I want to talk about? Okay, here's a bunch of stuff which I think is just getting, definitely getting away from what I think the good message of this is. Yeah, and it starts to get more Jesus-y, messianic, that Jesus is the way, the truth, and life, and that kind of nonsense. In fact, here he says here, Jesus said, quote, "I am the light that is over all things. I am all. From me all came forth, and to me all attained. Split a piece of wood, I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there." Now, unless you choose to interpret that symbolically, that Jesus is your own soul, I'm okay with that. But the moment you externalize it and you turn it into he is something and you need him to get close to the Father, and he's in all of nature, and once you get into that, I don't like that. You got to pick one. Are we talking about, even if it's just a symbol of a righteous human, a spiritual person, or are we talking about a deity, which again is a projection of yourself? If you're talking about Krishna, because Krishna could say this very same thing. I am the light that is over all things. I am all. From me all came forth. To me all attained. Split a piece of wood, I am there. Lift up the stone, you will find me there. But Krishna is, even though people worship him as an external thing, what ends up happening eventually is the more that they worship Krishna, the more they realize that Krishna is them. Even Shiva, Shivoham, that mantra, Shivoham, translates as I am Shiva. So even in the beginning, if you see Shiva, Shiva is everything. Shiva is Lord over all. Or Odin. Odin is the All-Father. People see Odin as Lord over everything. That's, Odin, Shiva, Krishna, you worship them eventually, they're going to pull you into an experience of yourself. And then you'll see that you are Krishna, you are Shiva, you are Odin. Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus keeps himself separate from you, and he is the Son of the Father, and through him you get to and I don't like any of that. So I don't like any of this that's coming through here. So I'm starting to see, the more that I read this, the more I can see that I think that this document was probably the first few verses. And then somebody would get it and add another. And the more you went on, the more you started seeing people putting their own political, their own religious, their own other stuff, which is completely opposite from the beginning. So even within this text, you're seeing how Christianity developed. It developed from something and turned into something totally different based on other people's projections and their political and religious agendas. Okay, let's see what else. All right, let's just get towards the end here. Let me just move all the way to the end. Here's another one. Here's a Gnostic. Now, here's where the Gnostic message can be taken hostage and abused, which I think happens all the time. Verse 110, Jesus said, "Let one who has found the world and has become wealthy renounce the world." I personally don't like the idea of separating the physical from the spiritual, because the physical is the manifestation of the spiritual. The goddess Venus, the goddess Lakshmi, the goddess Freja. Freja is all about beauty and physical things and wealth and sex and good food and enjoying the physical body, but that's her way of worshiping the infinite, because it's the infinite that created all these wonderful things within three-dimensional reality. And so when you worship Venus or a Venus deity, you're not looking to just become dense, in the physical. Again, you hear this again with people want to escape when they talk about the whole soul twin flame. Twin flame belief is Gnosticism. Whenever you go see a video and people talking about twin flames, and I'm with my twin flame on the 5D and I'm not in this 3D, and that's Gnosticism. It's escaping the physical, which is bad, for the non-physical, which is good. And that's just escapism. And that's, when you hear somebody say something like this, when you found the world and have become wealthy, you must renounce it. I personally don't care. The way I look at wealth is that if you're happy, you're rich. If you're living on a tent or you're living out of the back of your van, like a lot of people I see do here, because it's such a huge country, you can just travel up. People travel all up and down in vans, and they've got it all, set up with, little kitchens and everything. And they just travel around living out of their van. Very hippie-ish kind of thing. You can get away with it here. If that's your wealth, then the freedom that you have, you don't have to pay mortgage, but you don't have a hell of a lot of money, but you've got plenty of money to eat. You've got insurance if you're an Australian. You can go if you need health care, and you got the wealth, the most amazing, for me, the most amazing tropical paradise you could ever want. Why even leave your own country? You'd be rich as hell and have no money at all. So it's not about how much money you have. It's about experiencing this physical world. But I don't have a problem with you having millions of dollars and using your millions of dollars to experience it, as long as you're operating from your soul. I don't care. You could have $1 million and be absolutely, totally the poorest individual on the planet because you're separated from yourself. And you can be living out of the back of your beaten up little VW bus and be the richest person that ever existed. So I don't like this idea of if you find the world, you have to renounce I hate that. I love this physical world. I don't have a problem if you want to escape it through meditation, if that's what your soul wants to do. I'm okay with that. But I don't see this, this duality, and that's what this is. This is a religion of duality, and I think that's unhealthy. Now we're going to start seeing how, I read earlier where Jesus said, when you turn the male into the female and the female into the male, and you turn the one into the two and the upper and the lower and the inner and the outer, that's obvious. I teach that all the time. That's what the end result of this is going to be when we get to it, which is a meditation which will fuse the internal with the external. And when you do that, you'll see when you get there. And so I heard that in that earlier verse when Jesus was saying, when you can make the inner like the outer, the upper like the lower, bring the male and the female together so that neither is male and neither is female, then you will have found the kingdom. I like that. But now you're going to hear him say something completely opposite from that. And this tells me again, as time went on, especially now this is the last verse, now you're hearing some completely different religious, political agenda. Let's see. Oh, it even says here, saying probably added to the original collection at a later date. And I think that's true with most of this stuff here. The last verse, 114. Simon Peter said to them, "Make Mary leave us, for females don't deserve life." Jesus said, "Look, I will guide her to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit, resembling you males. For every female who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven. I mean, you can't get more misogynistic than that. I mean, I think that's pretty damn clear. Anyway, so that's it. I'm done with that. I'm happy to take questions if there are any. Let's see, not a whole lot on here. Let me just refresh this screen here. Hang on one second, just refreshing. All right, so Vincent.thunderwizard.com says hello. If you've watched it, you know that he is one of my astrologers. You can go get a reading from him at his website, Vincent.thunderwizard.com. He's got a sale going on, actually. Let's see, what else? God Emperor, honest feeling. I tried to do the 90-day challenge nighttime practice, but felt huge resistance and didn't finish entirely. No problem. It's totally okay. Do the best that you can. This isn't about perfection. You know, you can't push yourself past your abilities. You can slowly do better and better, but if you're doing any of it, if you're just showing up for any of it every day, if you just want to do the morning practice or you just want to do some of the nighttime practice, I mean, I'm okay with that. I was thinking about this when I put this together, like, is this going to be too powerful? And for some people, it's going to be powerful. So the good news is all you want to do is not try and be perfect. What you want to do is you want to ask yourself, over the long haul, am I improving? And I know, God Emperor, you are. You say that. You've told me that. A lot of things have improved. So that's okay. And again, if you're having resistance, it's a good thing. It means that you're growing. It's like when you come back from the gym and your muscles are sore. It means, wow, I'm growing. My muscles are healing themselves up. I don't want to go lift right now. I'll lift in a couple of days. Same thing. You don't want to do the full nighttime practice? You didn't finish it? No problem. Do the best that you can. Zach Johnson said, I heard the light you see when you die is a hospital light from being reborn. What? The light you see? Yeah, well, I mean, I can't prove or disprove that. You've also heard other things, Zach Johnson. You've heard that the light you see is your soul. You've heard that the light you see is a tunnel to heaven. You've heard that the light you see is God. So why are you only mentioning the one thing that is when you die is a hospital light? So why? That's really the question, is why is that the one that you focused on? So why don't you tell us what you're really asking, what you really think, what your feelings are about that? I hear all kinds of things every day. What does that mean? Why is that important to you? If you're able to look at that, you'll see what your projections are. God Emperor, question. I did the 90-day morning part of the practice, and during the sit and twist part of the practice, I feel and hear small cracks in my lower back as I'm doing it. Has this happened to you? Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not painful. Cracking your knuckles is just a release of gas inside the joints. So if you're twisting and you hear cracks and it's not, causing you damage, then it's, the vertebrae are popping. But I haven't been there. I didn't know what you experienced. Obviously, if you're doing it too hard and hurting yourself, you shouldn't do that. Don't do anything that you think might be harmful to yourself. Rasuo Van Rooyen, if you write the word question in all caps like God Emperor above you, there's a better chance I'm going to see it. Otherwise, I just think it's another comment and I scroll past it. So I caught it this time. So you say, do you think that money is the mark of the beast? So, are you new to my channel? If you are, welcome. People who ask me, I can tell when somebody's new because they ask questions that have nothing to do with anything I've ever talked about. And if you've been watching this video and paying attention to this video, you've heard me talk about how I do not believe in Christianity and religion and I badmouth it. So why in the world would I believe that? Two most important things in this life are pay attention and put effort. So if you were watching this video and paying attention to what I was saying and putting effort into listening, you would already know the answer to that question. So I will let you answer that question. What do you think I think of the idea that money is the mark of the beast? All right. Yeah, she says the cracking in his lower back isn't painful. Then it's a good thing. It means that your vertebrae are popping open, and that all of those things are good. Okay, what else? Nothing else? Okay, so you know the drill here. Thunderwizard.com. This is, I created Thunderwizard.com because people were asking me, you have so much information, so much books, I don't know where to start. Can you give me an A to Z guide? So I did. And I created some videos, and that is the first level, which is the mastery of shamanism. Hundreds of hours of video that you can watch. And I'll teach you everything from A to Z: shamanism, ritual, energy work, runes, etc., etc. And then you have, at the second level, you have the manifestation mastery course, which is really learning how to have the universe be your your video game, where you can just pull the levers and get what you want out of life. And then we have what I'm promoting now, which is the Warrior 90-day lightning qigong practice. So if you go there, you'll learn about what that is. And that is, I'm reverse engineering the most powerful energy spiritual practice that I've ever found. When I've shared this with people who were qigong masters, Taoist masters, yoga masters, they have all said, I've never felt anything this powerful. This is the most powerful meditation practice I've ever seen. And this has been kept secret for thousands of years, and I am one of the first to publicly share it. So that's, again, thunderwizard.com, Warrior 90-day lightning qigong. Check that out. And you can subscribe just for a month at a time. You don't want to do it forever, then just try it out for a month. You don't like it, you can unsubscribe. Very simple. All right, anything else? Subscribe, hit the bell button, smash the like button, and if you like these videos, take them and put them on your social media, your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, to get more and more people coming to this channel. All right, no other questions since then, so we're all done. So those are the two things I recommend, is the 90-day challenge and the Celestial Qigong, which can be found two places. You can find it at spirittao.com, and you can find it at Lockdown. You can get it for free at the Lockdown package, lockdown.thunderwizard.com. I mean, you're going to pay for other stuff in there, but you'll get the Celestial Qigong for free. Those two things are what you need in order to get your body and your nervous system and your meridian system prepared for the power of the lightning energy, which is what we tap into in that. All right, as you can see, I'm starting to fade out here. Didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night, so I'm gonna eat and go lie down. So that's it for me, guys. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe, and I will see you when I see you.